called Balmikis in city and towns of India. So they are still existing with this scavenging stripping work. So I am here presenting a table in which we can trace out that not only in Punjab but the other states of India, they are also being found with many a community which we generally giving the title of Valmikis. So in Andhra Pradesh, Madiga, Assam, Mehtar Gungi, Bengal, Hari and Hadi, Bihar, Mehtar, and many a community by the different name, they are still existing and working as a sweeper and scavengers. So through this map, we can also visualize that many states they are going to be traced out with these kinds of scavenging, sweeping identities and the communities. So basically, this whole story is going to be traced from the 19th and the 20th century, where we are finding that communal presentation by which the certain population of these communities is going to be traced out, and this going to become a benchmark to create these kind of religious communities in India. So basically, new kinds of avenues, which was based on a communal population, which going to give some certain legal rights and presentation. So that could be marked with this system of presentation. So basically, when we are going to trace out, so we are finding that untouchability under the religious patronage, this is going to be traced out like a system of caste, which is creating many occupational identities in India. So, an untouchable, when we are tracing through the literature, we are finding that for Indian society, they are going to be visualized on the basis of purity pollution. So, this purity and pollution is become a symbolization, especially in Indian caste system, for higher caste and the lower caste. So if only the few families under a community they are doing the scavenging or sweeping work, so whole of the community they are going to be termed as the untouchable communities of India. So next we see, as we all are very much familiar, that the caste system in India it is very diverse system, and this caste system under the patronization of religion is supporting and justifying the untouchability, which is going to victimize this Chuda people, which in modern India is going to be termed as Balmikis. So I just want to say something over the Balmiki community. So mainly when we are going to trace out the history of this community, so we are finding some anthropological data by which we are tracing some genealogies of the Chudas. Then we are finding that these whole communities they were going to endorse some of the traditions of Hinduism and Islam, and that is going to become a riddle or puzzlement for the Britishers. So this anthropological data, it is finding that Lal Beg or sometime Balasha or Bal Lake or Balmiki, this is going to be attached with the religious identity. So I'm here supporting some of the British census ethnography, which is done by Russell Rose Ibeston in the 20th century, when we are finding that Balmik or Valmik has no any correlation with the Chudas. It means in their life it has no any existence of Valmiki or the Valmiki sect. Even the Lal Beg, which is being considered that he was the disciple of Valmiki, it has no any concern which is supported by Rose in his census of 1911. Even the British is also going to support this idea that it has no any concern. So next we see that when Punjab is going to be annexed in the year 1849, so after that a certain British rule and regulation, it is going to make the certain changes in the identities of this Balmiki community. So basically this is going to make some changes in the year 1850 and then 1869, when some local municipality system is going to be started. Even we see that these Chuda people who under the patronization of Hinduism, they were being called as a sweeper and scavenger, but when they were going to adopt the Sikhism and they were being called as Majhabi Chudas, so they were going to be recruited in the British army, and they were going to be given some kind of honor and respect. So next we see that basis of this social history of the Baltiki community, anthropological minded Britisher, they were going to craft some of the story related with this community. So this knowledge of social anthropology could be turned into a very good weapon when it is used by the Britisher. So purposely the Britisher, they were going to study the communities of Balmikis because at that time uh, zoonotic diseases, infectious diseases is going to be begin in the military barracks and the hospitals. So British sanitary mission, it was required for kind of a good strength of sweeper and the scavengers. So even when the British institution were going to be started at that time, in British barracks or hospitals, there was no any waterborne toilets, only the dry toilets were available. So for purposely, they need some community to do this work of scavenging in the British cantonment area. So purposely, we see that in Himachal Pradesh, the community Doom, in Punjab, the community Chuda, and in Uttar Pradesh, the community Mehatar, they were going to be forced for this dirty scavenging work. Next, we see that there are some traditions, there are some apparatus which is used by the Britisher in the 19th and 20th century to create some identity based on the population. Because at that time, a new kind of avenues is being opened in the government department, in employment representation, in the municipal board system, judicial post, and the criteria is only one, that community based population is going to out to impart these kinds of opportunities to the Indians. So basically, it was a numerical numbers in population which is going to share the data and which is going to share the work opportunity based on the occupation in the British government, which was completely based on the population counting of the one's community. So under this, we see that we also made an attempt to evaluate the sociological history through the anthropological lenses when we are finding some history of the Chudas. So we see that this 19th and 20th century in the cities and town was having the availability of manholes, sewer, gutters, and for the cleaning work, we need some kind of community which is able to do this job, but they should not challenge the British hegemony which they were able to create. So these cleaning occupation were assigned to them based on the caste tradition. So we see that there was a census commissioner during the time of 1891. He was E. A. Gate. So basically, he is going to create the identity based on the occupation. But when the data is going to be checked out by the census regional commissioner, so they were not able to justify that these whole communities are they being attached with this work or not. But without any much calculation, because the British government, they require the sanitary workers, so they create this identity because it was a very high time when they were witnessing that a high rate of mortality among the British troops is going to have prevalence of zoonotic diseases, and this was the time of the demands of the health workers, so which is going to be legally codified and legally imposed on the Indian communities, and Chuda, which was right now is Balmiki, is one among them. So the British officer, they were tracing that this community is landless community and they were very high in number, especially in Punjab. So lastly, when we see that first of all the scavenging sweeping community is going to be created by the British government, after this the Indians is going to play a political role in this. When we in our last chapter we try to see that this serious situation is being estimated when Indian National Congress, through the nominati politics of the cultural assertion, they were going to use these sweeper communities for the amelioration of their local politics. So the Chudas in Punjab, they were going to be redefined culturally by the process of Sanskritization, as Srinivas was also supporting this idea that religion through the Sanskritization is being supported to this community and they were going to adopt the Hindu ritualization. So in this whole process of redefining this community, they were honored with a very high sound of title that was Balmiki community in the census of 1931. So we come to a conclusion that in 1931, by the efforts of Congress and its allies, so this identity is being imposed over them. So now we also see that if we are going to trace out the history of this community, they were the staunch follower of Bala Shah Nuri in Punjab, whereas Lal Beg in the UP is also worshipped by them. But the cultural tradition, which is going to be started in the 19th and the 20th century, they were going to identify these community as non-Hindu. They have no any traditions of Hindu community, and now they were going to be victimized by the religious zeal of the Arya Samaji leaders to convert them into Hindu. So now it would be very right to say that the agenda of Valmiki movement in Punjab, it is going to be endorsed by the cultural assertion, which in the late 19th century, a plan of Arya Samaj to impose or to use these kinds of tradition to build a Hindu identity among this community. And again, it was accelerated by the Hindu Mahasabha and Gadhian movement of Harijan movement. So these all assertions were going to be created through the supports of Congress and its allies. So now by forming their Hindu identity, the Hindus could achieve political denominations in the British Empire. We also see that the congressman and its allies who were going to create these sweeper identities is the main force to create an identity of Hinduism in among these lower caste people. And it is also the Hindu influence which is going to discourage the un-Hindu practice among these different class people. So Harijan Sevak Sangh, it is also going to join with the other Hindu reformist organization, just like the Arya Samaj and the Hindu Mahasabha. And thus, Gandhi, instead of untouchability's removal, planned to implant a new kind of cultural persuasion, cultural assertion, which is going to mold these people as a staunch followers of Hinduism. So, therefore, positively, the Congress candidates, just like Lala Lajpat Rai, Madan Mohan Malviya, and C. Kelkar, they were going to join this Hinduization process. And Arya Samaj, from its beginning, it is going to support the Hindu interest through the process of Shuddhi movement in the later part of the 19th century. So, Rashtriya Samaj Sevak Sangh in 1925, it is also going to create this Hindu ideology. And at last, we see that the Constitution of India, in its Scheduled Caste Section Order of 1950, it is going to declare that the person who is going to profess this religion different from Hinduism shall not be entitled to take any other benefits of reservation. So, by this declaration as the Scheduled Caste Order of 1950, now this Hindu identity in the name of reservation is going to be imposed over the Balmiki community and other lower caste category who were going to get the benefits of reservation. So now they, in the hope of getting more and more benefits.
Rajiv, sorry to bother you, but you have to sum up now.
So basically, I'm discussing the major conclusion of the thesis. So I hope that I'm able to conclude the chapter's conclusion. So with this, I'm going to add up my discussion, sir.
So, as after discussion, Rajiv, now your Viva is open for discussion. So, Professor Kaushik, I request you to.
Yeah, with the permission of the chair, can I ask a few? I have a few queries.
Sir. So, you're most welcome, sir.
Okay, Rajiv, thank you for making a succinct presentation. Now, there are 2-3 things I want to know. One,
yes, sir.
How significant was the army service for this community, and did it result in any upward social mobility for them? Especially, can we apply the modernization theory for them in this regard? Number 2 is that you have said your arguments well, but can you tell us something about the sources which you have used? And last, third question is that how you place your whole work, your PhD dissertation within the ambit of social history of colonial India. Thank you.
Okay, right, sir. The first question, when we see that the involvement of army is just limited to the Mazhabi community, which is a part of Sikhism, but in Hinduism, they were being recruited as the scavengers and the sweepers. So, main thing is that if they were going to convert their religion, and the same people of Chuda recruited into the army, they were going to get the honor, they were going to get the prestige. But if they were going to remain as the Hindu Balmikis, so they were going to be recruited as the scavengers and the sweeper. So their mobilization is going to underpin only by converting their religion. If they are going to remain as Hindu, so their destiny decided that by the caste name they were going to be recruited as the sanitary workers or other more identity will not be fixed for them. So, sir, may I get the second question?
Yeah, I got your army thing. The second is that what are the sources you have used? Can you just tell us a few things about the sources you have used?
Sir, basically, my main sources were the census reports and the regional data which were collected by the British ethnographer, just like the Rose or Ibbotson and Russell. So when I was going to get through all the discussion and detail about the Balmiki community, so I find that the main interest of the British ethnographer is just to reduce the financial burden which is related with the death of the Indian British soldiers. So for that purpose, now they want to have an interest to create an identity which as a sanitary workers will do work of cleaning in the British barracks and the cantonment and hospitals. So through these sources, I get to know this new history of Balmikis.
Okay, so these sources are in Chandigarh archives.
Sir, basically, I find that I went to National Archives of India and there is one website, archive.org. I find some sources from there. Then my department and the Central Library of Punjab University, I am also finding some of the sources. Then some of the sources I get through when I went to my field survey in Jalandhar, Ludhiana and Amritsar. So there were various leaders who gave me some of the sources which they have already.
Okay, my last question. How you place your whole work within the metrics of social history of colonial India? This is the last one.
Sir, first I see that this community, they have not any social history. So social history is being crafted by the Britisher. So when we were going to read all the data in the census of the regional ethnographer officers who were being used for modifying the data of this regional community, so we were finding that they were the agriculturist community. This is going to be supported by the Briggs, Russell, Ibbotson, or even Rose. But their main interest of the Britisher is just to create a society of sanitary workers, which they have an intense need. Because this whole cleaning work, which is a kind of shit work, it is not going to be performed by any other lower caste community. So they were going to use the traditions, and these traditions were mainly going to declare that only this community could be recruited under the headings of Balmiki or Bhangi for the sanitary work.
Okay, thank you.
I find this, sir, this is the new history of Balmiki, and when it is going to be used by the researchers, so a new angle of Chuda community we will see that how they were going to be used by the Britisher, and again that the Congress and its ally they created a religious assertion to mold them as the Hindu community only.
Okay, thank you. I have no more queries or questions.
So
thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Professor Kaushik. Now, Rajiv, after your presentation, we have also got the report from the second external examiner. There are certain questions or queries which that examiner has posed. So I would be reading that. And the first one is, what could be the distinctive feature of sweeping community in Punjab? How you find that one distinctive
Sir,
feature?
as I already stated that first of all, there is no any tradition which I found that this community is linked with the sweeping scavenging work. But yes, I will accept that the Britisher, for their own financial purpose, they have created an identity which could be used as a sanitary workers in the barracks and the cantonment and British hospitals. So they were using the tradition so that this community should not challenge the hegemony which is created by the British government.
The second one is, how could you treat chamars and chudas as one in spite of the visible differences?
So basically, I'm going to advocate Briggs, which is going to trace out the history of chamars in UP. So he said that chamars were none other than but a second, you can say, version of the chudas, because we find that most of the areas of Punjab and UP they are using the two terms in a combined form, that is chuda chamar. Even the rose in the census of 1911, it is also supporting that chamars are none other than but a part of the Chuda community.
So,
So basically,
basically question raised by the second examiner is this: you are studying a case. There is a case study of Punjab. In
Yes.
Punjab, you agree that they have the same elements and they are combined. They're one.
So main thing is that the profession is not the stripping and scavenging work. They are the leather worker. So if we see the social hierarchy, they have a more respect and honor. And we also find that they are more educated than the Balmiki population. So that's why we see the more social political mobilization in the community of Samar, which we are missing in the community of Balmikis.
So that was a basic question. That you have used colonial scholars,
Yes.
clubbing them as one, whereas there is a difference between. That is what this external examiner,
Yes,
from
sir.
Punjab, he was asking. The third one is, in what way could we make sense of enumeration of population as a political weapon?
Sir, in the last chapter, I have used the data which clearly show that this community was very large in number. So basically, they were the agriculture laborer. Now, the impetus which is going to create a motivation among the Congress leaders, that if it is going to join the Hindu population, so the population of Hindu will be increased. And the data which was created in the census of 1911, which has used the 10 test. So by the 10 test, it is already been declared by the British government that these lower caste people, especially Balmiki, they have no any relation with the Hindus. So I find that they were around 1 by 7th population in whole India. So if this population is going to be removed from Hindus, so I think so the Hindu, they will become the minority group in India. So if all the population of the scheduled caste or scheduled tribe or OBC is going to removed from the mainstream Hindu population.
So, do you subscribe to the view, as it seems to be emerging from your thesis, that all communities in India are political?
I find that first of all, the Britishers they have not created any political identity, but yes, Congress and its allies they used this population of untouchables to create a data of Hindu in more numbers so that more representative presentation in the political scenario they can easily get. So I think so these committee they were going to be politicized by the Congress and its allies.
Question is, are communities political? Not how they are being used. Is every community in India political?
Is every community is political? Sir, are you talking that they were going to be politicized through the Hinduization?
Not politicized, but the argument from your thesis, as the external examiner asked, that it seems that every community in India is political.
Every community, sir. If I talk about the Balmiki community, so basically most of the Balmiki people they have no any understanding of the politics, because they are going to become a tool for the others and they were going to be used by the other parties to increase their number. So I'm not finding that any of the Balmiki leaders or any of the regional area in Punjab, they having more alertness and awareness about the politics. So I don't find that likewise the Chamar community, they have more consciousness about the politics. So Balmiki people, they are going to miss the political opportunities.
Okay, fine. What are the historiographical implications of your work? That is the last question.
So sir, will you make it more simplify so that I can answer?
जिस तरह से जो काम हो रहा है हिस्टोरियोग्राफी में इस कम्युनिटी में, बिकॉज द आर्गुमेंट विच हैज कम आउट फ्रॉम यू कि सोशली यू आर सेइंग कि इतना ज्यादा नहीं है कल्चर सोशल, पॉलिटिकल भी नहीं है, आप या दो आर्गुमेंट्स बिल्ड कर रहे हैं ना कि ना पॉलिटिकल ज्यादा है ना सोशल ज्यादा है। सो जो हिस्टोरियोग्राफी का जिस तरह से काम आगे हो रहा है, आपका काम उसको कैसे प्लग करता है, फिर इन व्हाट सेंस यू आर प्लगिंग द गैप हिस्टोरियोग्राफी देखते हैं।
Okay, thank you, sir. So first of all, sir, I see that this much large population which I am finding in the Balmiki community. So basically, if the consciousness, political consciousness come to Balmiki, they can use this strength as a weapon to get the political rights. But till now, I don't find that because they are going to stuck themselves into the Balmiki identity, which is just a religious identity. So they need to follow the Chamars of India as they were using their identity and strength to get the rights from the mainstream politics. So till then, if they are not going to understand the strength of their operation, so they are not able to justify that they are going to get some rights in the future.
So okay, these were the questions, and now the Viva is open for if any participant wants to have any input, or because being an open Viva, every member is invited, every participant is invited to have his query or question asked. But please, it is best if you just message me first so that I can name. Okay, in online mode, then there is a chaos if we all unmute at the same time. So any query from anyone who is participating? So Rajiv, there are no, I think.
Priyatosh ji, am I audible?
हाँ जी, you are audible. हाँ जी, Dr. Rajesh Kumar.
Rajiv ji, I have two small suggestions and one question I want to ask, although I'm not having a background of history. Firstly, when I looked at your first slide, you are talking of social stratification across the globe. But you must have studied that social stratification in our society is very unique, because we have not only division of labor, it is division of laborers, and we have untouchability. So I think in our society, this caste malaise is very unique. We have to understand this. And second point is, you have mentioned Gandhi and others, but I don't know how you have, maybe it must be in your thesis, but not about anything about Ambedkar and how the term Dalit was coined, and even the term scheduled caste. And thirdly, I want to ask this question: that is manual scavenging still prevalent in Punjab? Thank you.
Well, I think so that if you are going to read the many newspapers, so you will find that still the manual scavenging is prevailing, and many deaths, around 100 of deaths, especially in the daily. It is going to be reported by the national newspapers of India. Second thing is that, sir, the word which you are using, Malay is a foreign identity. It's not an identity of scavenging and sweeping community. Third thing, that the main aspect that why it is very rigid in India and not in the European and Asian country, main thing is that here we are going to decide the identity of a person through the caste in which the person is going to be born. So main thing is that this whole aspect is different in India and in the European or the Asian countries. So if especially I'm going to talk about this community, that why they are being segregated in India, because the name Balmiki, which is sounding very high, but if we are going to see their social reputation is still low, because by birth the identity is created that they are scavengers and sweepers. So how it is going to be changed? So I hope that I am able to answer your questions, sir. So if you have any more questions,
Rajiv ji, I have used the term Malaise, English word MALAISC. That is, you can say scourge of caste or the cancer of caste in our society. Malaysia or Antyaja, that is a different term by which we coin untouchables or ex-untouchables. Thank you.
yes, yes, yes. So thank you, sir, for guiding me. I'm going to incorporate your ideas when I'm going to next write something over this committee. So thank you very much, sir.
So any query from any participant? Thanks, Dr. Rajesh. He is a former chairperson of Department of Women Studies and a very active researcher. So any other query? So if I can ask Rajiv towards the end, just a simple query. You have used the term Valmiki, na? You are referring to the term Valmiki. How this term evolved and why you are, how you perceive this term and how it is so easily accepted by the community. If still the challenges are there, but this community has accepted this term and you are also using it. So the development of this term in itself, in its own right.
Basically, I already quoted two main researchers who were going to do the ethnographic survey in Punjab. One is Rose and other one is Russell. So we also see that there are modern study of Rama Sharma, who has studies over the Balmikis and Chuda in Delhi, Jaul in UP, and Jurgens Mayer in Punjab, and we can also see some work of Vijay Prashad in Jalandhar. So what they were going to trace out, their finding is basically that this identity is created, because Russell also in his work in the year 1960 he supported that there is no any correlation of Balmik. Basically, there are two words, Balmik and Balnek, and the writer of Ramayana is Balmiki. So there is no any concern, but yes, there is some identical word which is going to match with each other. So as I said that this community of Balmiki, they are not very much educated, so they were not able to differentiate that who is the writer of the Ramayana, who is Valmiki, and the saint who is being worshipped in the tribal culture of Chuda, he was Balnek or Balmiki. So I was tracing many a book, but I'm not able to trace out any ethnographic survey where I'm justified that Balnek or Balmik and Valmiki is the same. So I'm going to endorse the idea of Russell, who say there is no any concern of writer of Ramayana who is Valmiki, and the tribal saint who was called somewhere Balnek or Balmik.
So you are asserting that Valmikis, they are basically tribal element.
Balnek or Balmik is a tribal element. Yes.
So you are placing Balmikis in tribes, not in castes.
Basically, I'm not placing. There was an Achud Udhar committee after 1932, which is going to associate its work with the Congress committee, and they were justifying it. They were justifying that Balnek or Balmiki is the Valmiki of Ramayana. So without any coherent study, the community of Balmiki, they were going to accept this identity. Until now, there is no more challenge. And if me like person is going to challenge this kind of identity, so I think so they were going to hammer upon me.
It's an academic thing. Just ask the way you are moving forward. That was my query. So there is a question by Sukhchan. Sukhchan wants to ask, is there any impact seen on the working conditions of sanitation worker after mechanization?
I feel that maybe in the 23rd or 22nd century, if the mechanization process is going to be adopted, so more the communities, I think so, no any Balmiki, but even the general category, they were also going to get being involved in the sanitation work, because the main thing is that if the machines were going to be used, so the polluted work will not be done through the hands. So pollution identity, it is going to create a worse identity for spongers. So as we are seeing that in European countries, the mechanization work is being promoted and it is going to be used by the sanitation workers. So there is no any concept of untouchability. So untouchability is a more we are going to identify some people that they are impure or their outlook is impure.
So there is no still improvement.
So I think the government of India, they need to use the mechanization in the sanitation work. So first, it is going to reduce the death when the sewerage worker they are going to face this kind of crisis. And second thing is that the identity of untouchability it is also going to be washed out by adopting the mechanization process.
So and okay, fine. So any other query? If there is any other query from any participant. So I think there is no more queries. So that conclude the Viva presentation of Rajiv Atwal, and with the permission of Professor Kaushik, who is here to take your Viva, I declare it this Viva to be successful if Professor Kaushik gives me a consent. So now
I agree with you.
So we can now notification would be soon, and you can be you are now we can congratulate, and you are a successful candidate, and you have successfully defended your Viva presentation.
So
Congratulate.
I